Namo Buddhaya. Please be seated. Now we pay homage to the triple gem. भिक्षु लोग आ जाइए ऊपर में. All bhikkhus, please come on the. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivat Swakhato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasa Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangha Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Yete peso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vijja Charana Sampanno Sugato Lokavido Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sattva Deva Manusanang Buddho Bhagavati Namo Samma Sambuddhassa Swakhato Bhagavata Dhammo Sandeteko Akaliko Yehi Pasiko Pachatang Veditabo Vinyohite Namo Tassani Nikasa Dhammasa Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Vujjopati Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Nyayapatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sami Chipatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Yadidang Chattarye Purisa Yogani Atta Pugala Yesa Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Avu Pavuneyo Dakhineyo Anjali Karaniyo Anu Punya Ketang Lokasati Namo Tassa Atta Ariya Puggala Mahasanghasa Yevang Buddhang Sarantanang Dhammang Sanghang Cha Bhikkhavo Bhayang Vacham Bhitatang Va Lo Mahang So Nahe Sati Ghanasa Rapaditena Dipena Tamadhang Sinati Loka Sambuddhang Pujayami Tamonudang Gandha Sambha Rayutena Dhupena Sugandhina Pujaye Pujaniyantang puja bhajanamuttamang vannagandha gunopetang hetang kusuma santating pujayami munindasa siripada saroruhe Pujemi buddhang kusumena nena punyena metena ca tumokhang popang milayati yatha idamme ka tathayati vinasa bhavang vandami chetiyang sabbang Sabbatane supatitthitang sar rikadhatu mahabodhing buddharupang samule nisinova sabbari vijayang akapato Sabbanyotang satha vande tang bodhipadapang yimeyete mahabodhi lokanathena pujita ahang pite namasami bodhiraja namatute Now, first of all, I pay homage to the Triple Gem. I pay homage to Bada Bhante Ji, Guru Bhante Ji. Now today, we all together, let us pay homage to Most Venerable Ajahn Jayasaro Bhante Ji, who has come all the way from Thailand, giving this precious Dhamma in India out of deep concern, care, compassion for India, which has given the Buddha Dhamma to the world. So now we will pay homage to Bhante Ji. Okasa vandami Bhante dvaratayena katang sabang aparadhang kamathami Bhante dutiyampi okasa vandami Bhante dvaratayena katang sabang aparadhang kamathami Bhante tatiyampi okasa vandami Bhante dvaratayena katang sabang aparadhang kamathame Bhante anukampang upadaya. Ama Bhante sadhu. Guru Bhante.
Respects to the Venerable Sangha and blessings to all lay community gathered here this evening. Very pleased to have the opportunity to meet with you all this evening, and I hope that after discourse there'll be enough time for discussion, questions and answers, because when a teacher arrives from elsewhere and doesn't know everyone, maybe there are areas of Dhamma which you are keen to get more encouragement, advice, understanding of, some things that may be in the Dhamma discourse not so applicable. So I will talk and then open it up for everyone to have their say. I think that many of you will know this, that I first came to India in 1975 as a boy, really, of 17 years old. And whereas many young people in India dream of going to England and America, my dream was always to come to India. And I finished my education at the age of 17, went to work, made some money, then started on the overland trip from England to India, because I wanted to learn about all of the cultures that put along that path through Europe and through Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, finally India. I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted adventures. I wanted experience. And I'm looking back on some of the events of very memorable times. I was in India altogether for a year and traveled all around the country, from Amritsar to Delhi, down the west coast to Madurai and Kodai Canal and Chennai and Orissa and Calcutta and Himachal Pradesh, so much traveling. And I had this view I see now. Well, there were two things, I think. One, I was always very adventurous, but part of that was, I think, delusion. The delusion of the young person who believes that they're the hero of their story and the hero of a series, meaning that you have to come back next week, and no matter how dangerous the situation, you'll survive because you're the hero. So I was quite reckless on occasions, and looking back on it now, I'm amazed how reckless I was in times. But also the underlying idea that I had was somehow wisdom arises from accumulated experience. And my interest had always been, since a child, wisdom. What is wisdom? How do you acquire wisdom? And at that point in my life, it seemed to me you experience as wide a range of possible experiences as possible, and somehow there's a kind of a digestion of these experiences, and wisdom arises somehow as the result of that. And then while I was traveling in India, I met people who'd been doing the same kind of thing with the same kind of ideas for 10 or 20 years. And they didn't seem particularly wise people to me. In fact, they seemed to be more entrenched in certain ideas or prejudices and biases. And so I realized that I got it wrong. It's not just experience, and that experience will somehow mature into wisdom, but that you have to apply yourself. It's how you relate to your experience, your the framework within, or the frame within which you experience. Some of you may be familiar with this Pali phrase, yoniso manasikara, which is translated into English in a number of different ways, which is in itself an indication of how difficult it is to express this concept. When we translate it as wise consideration, then the emphasis to me seems too much on the actual thinking, whereas yoniso manasikara is how you hold something, the frame through which you perceive something. And we're always perceiving our surroundings and our life, indeed, through a frame. And in Dhamma, we need to be conscious of, aware of the frame. I'll give you a simple example. Many people now have a frame of negativity. So they consider themselves unworthy, bad, hopeless, never going to amount to much in life. Everything, this frame is, everything I do always goes wrong. I'm never going to accomplish anything. These kinds of thoughts, again and again, like poisonous mantras in the mind, create a framework through which you interpret your experiences. And so in the case of mistakes and failures, this is has particularly serious consequences. Someone fails, everyone fails. That's an experience of failure. But someone with that negative frame immediately interprets that as further proof that I'm hopeless, I'm no good. Whereas someone else with a more wholesome frame. So that would be ayoniso manasikara. The yoniso manasikara is composed of right view, that I am a human being, I am a learner. I can learn. I can learn from mistakes and grow from mistakes, and in fact often learn and grow more through my mistakes than through my successes. I can bounce back. I'm strong enough to deal with this. I have the Buddha Dhamma Sangha as my refuge. So there are many different ways in which we create this framework in which a mistake is not a catastrophe. In the old English idiom, we don't make mountains out of molehills. So life is always full of ups and downs. And when people ask for blessings, what they're usually asking is, Bhanteji, make the path of my life a smooth one. But the Buddha never gave that kind of blessing. His blessing would be, may you have a smooth journey over the bumpy road. See, that's doable. That's not unrealistic. But it's not a blessing that comes from outside of yourself as much as something that you create within yourself. So if we're expecting a life of virtue and goodness to result in a smooth road, to get whatever we want, to pass all our exams, to make money and so on, it doesn't work like that. And then it's easy to get discouraged if we assume that the results of goodness should be gains and fame and praise and all these things. The Buddha is saying, look more closely. So the whole practice of Buddhism is often it's commonly a matter of observation and learning from what works and what doesn't work. And I would say, even if you have a fully enlightened teacher on speed dial, if you can't live close to him, any question you can ask at any time, like an enlightened AI, you know, and yet at the end of the day, practice is always an element of trial and error, because everyone is slightly different. No one technique works for everyone. You can say there are certain techniques that work for most people. So in Buddha Dhamma, then often Anapanasati is taught as a basic meditation technique, because it works for most people, but it doesn't work for 100 people. There's no, if a teacher is saying only this technique works, no other technique works, then this is where you have to be a little bit wary, because it just doesn't work like that. So we're looking and we're observing, and here, as I say, our frame for experience. And so this was one of the first things I learned as a young man, a teenager in India, was that I was meeting people of incredible experiences. They could tell their life story and you'd just be absolutely hanging on their every word. You know, so colorful, so incredible. And yet they didn't seem to have really gained much from it other than memories. And this was my conclusion. Experience leads to memory. But experience through the framework of right view can lead to wisdom. Experience through unwise frameworks can lead to just more reinforcement of pre-existing prejudices and biases. After I left India, I returned to my home, and I realized there was nothing that I wanted to do other than practice the Dhamma. So I had to break it to my parents, and it was quite difficult, especially for my father, to accept that I wasn't going to go to university and that I wanted to find a way of practicing the Dhamma or full time. And like most teenagers, certainly in England, my relationship with my parents had been a rocky one for some time. And I used to have long hair, and I used to have such arguments with my father, particularly about my long hair. And, the arguments, it cut it off, and it's my hair, I should have the right to decide how long my hair is, and things that seemed so important at the time and so incredibly trivial after time has passed. But when I told my father that I didn't want to go to university, it was a big thing for him, because he came from a very poor family and had to leave school at 11 and go to work to help support the family. And the brothers, they had a very small house, and there was one big bed, and half of the children had their heads at one end and half the children had their heads at the other end, and their feet met in the middle. And nobody in my family ever, either on my father's side or my mother's side, had ever been to university. And I was a good scholar and top of my class, so they put me up a year and I was top of my class. And my father had such great expectations and hopes for me as a scholar, as perhaps as a professor or something like this in the future. So for me to say I not only that I wasn't going to university, but that I wanted to go to Thailand, thousands and thousands of miles away, and become a monk. This was such a incredible disappointment for him. And my father had always been kind of anti-religion, and I must admit, in before I discovered Buddhism, the religious traditions that I was familiar with, also I had no time for them. They made no sense to me. So we shared that for some time. Anyway, why I'm telling you this is that when I told my father, and it must have been one of the biggest disappointment in his life, he said, I don't know much about Buddhism, but if you're really sure that it will make you happy, I'm happy. That's all I want. That's all I want for you. And that was the first moment of real connection, and really, oh, that's what the love of a father is. That his desire for his son's happiness exceeds his hopes and expectations, and for the son to succeed in all the things that he wasn't able to succeed in. So this was a real wonderful moment in my life, and he willingly signed a piece of paper saying he gave permission for me to take Upasampada, which is also necessary. But before I went to Thailand, I wanted to prove, like most young men want to prove things to their dads. I wanted to prove to my father that entering monastery wasn't just an escape from responsibility or from hard work or something like that. So I told him one day I'm going to go make some money, and he said, "How are you going to do that?" And I said, "I'm going to go to Switzerland and work on a farm." And he said, "What farm? Which farm?" I don't know yet, but I've heard that they employ seasonal labor on the farms in Switzerland, and they pay very good money, much better than in England. So he just sort of shook his head, and I set off hitchhiking from England through Belgium and Germany, and I arrived in Switzerland and arrived at a city called Lausanne, sat down in the railway station, and I just thought, I'm going to close my eyes and meditate. I'm going to open my eyes, and I'm going to choose someone to help me. And I closed my eyes, and opened my eyes, and I looked, and I thought, that man, he's going to help me. And I walked over, and I said, "Excuse me, my French is not very good. Do you speak English?" He said, "Yes." I said, I want to work on a farm. And he said, "Yeah, sure, come with me. I've got to catch a train to my village, and there are lots of farms, and I know a lot of farmers." And so he took me home, and we spent the night at his house, and next day took me to the farm, and I worked on a farm, and 6 weeks later I returned home with a lot of money. That's impressed my father. So I felt that I could now leave the world without him having that doubt or that concern that monastic life was somehow an easy option, that I was entering monastery because I was afraid that I couldn't deal with all the pressures of so-called real world. So going back to my time in India, another couple of stories I want to tell you. And one is that I was in India for 6 months. I ran out of money, and I got back as far as Iran, and I ended up staying a few months in Iran. But on the first, I won't say it's a long story, lots of experiences, but I had no money at all. And I was in Tehran, capital city of Iran, and I had no money, and I had like one coin, the real. And there was in those days there were soup shops where you could get a bowl of soup for 1 real and free bread. So you could fill up just for 1 real. That was what I was going to do. And I spent the night in an alleyway behind the French embassy, and thinking it would be safe there. And I was walking all this way to the soup shop that I knew, and I had upset stomach, and I wasn't very clean. I was just going to wash myself in local public toilets, and I was kind of a pretty bit of a mess. And then suddenly this woman appeared before me. She'd obviously on her way to work, and she looked me up and down. She's very stern, and she pointed at me and pointed at her and said, and so obviously I had to follow her. Followed her to a block of flats, went up in the little elevator, and she pointed to the bathroom, and he's like, "Go and have a bath." And then when and then I heard the sound of her outside, and there were like a pair of jeans and a t-shirt, and she'd given me some of her son's clothes to put on. She wanted to burn mine, I think. And then I came out from the shower, and she laid out a beautiful breakfast for me. I had a wonderful meal. And she kept looking at the clock, so I realized she must be late for work. So I ate quickly, and then we went, and we said goodbye at the same spot that we met an hour before. Half an hour. Never said a word. She never smiled, anything. But she did this act of kindness out of the goodness of her heart for a stranger. And it impressed me so much. And I subsequently, I got adopted by a Tirani family and started to work and made some money. And instead of going back to England, I went back to India. And the second trip in India, no more experiences and traveling. I just want to find a quiet place to meditate, which I did find. And one day I was meditating, and then the memory of this lady in Tehran came to my mind. And it was so strong, and I had tears in my eyes. What a kind woman to make that generosity to a stranger. So I was thinking this, and then I had another thought. She gave me like one shower, one breakfast, one pair of trousers, one t-shirt. And I'm so grateful to this woman. I have tears in my eyes. What about my mother? How many meals did she give me? How many hundreds of meals? How many clothes did she buy for me? How much did she do for me? And why don't I ever think about that? And this was also a turning point in my life, and also a realization that the fruits of meditation are not necessarily what you think they'll be. For me, it was an ability to reassess and to look at experience and the past with a fresh mind, and things that I'd taken for granted and things I never really thought about very much, just suddenly, oh, that's so beautiful, that's so. And these days, teaching young people about the great debt that we owe our parents, not so easy these days. And children, adolescents can be quite cynical about their parents, certainly in urban areas, in the cities, in Bangkok, in Thailand. And the idea of many teachers and elders that you should teach filial piety in a sense of you should be grateful to your parents. You shouldn't be ungrateful. And it doesn't work very well. And what I say to people is, no, you've got it wrong. This is not the way that we teach in Buddhism. In other religions, you're given these ideals about who you should be. And the weakness of them, in my view, is there's very little practical advice. And people feel stranded. You know, religious texts give you all these inspiring examples. You should be like this, you should be like that. And you say, yes, yes, yes. But then when you ask, but I'm not like that. And how can I change myself from how I am now to how you say I should be? And there's nothing there for you. And this is the strength of Buddhism. It's so practical and down to earth. And one of the key principles is that the more you open your mind, the more you are aware, the more you see clearly, the more those virtues will manifest by themselves. So what could be more foolish than the position, I'm a self-made man, you know, there's that kind of confidence, you know. I did this all myself. I was born in poverty and I dragged myself up and I put myself through school and I made money and it sounds quite impressive until you say, well, really look more closely. Did you really do that all by yourself? What about when you were born? How did you even survive? What about your education? All the books you read? I read so many books and yes, but so you were dependent on the knowledge of others that you found in books. You were taught, you had teachers. And at the very least, you had the ability to understand and express yourself in a human language, your mother tongue. Maybe you learnt more than one. We call it mother tongue because the first teacher of that language is mother. So the more you open your mind to all the things that you've been given, the less that conceit of I'm so special, I'm this, I'm that, falls away. You don't have to say, you shouldn't be so proud, you shouldn't be so arrogant, you should be a little bit more humble, you should be grateful. This is not a should and shouldn't teaching. This is to open your eyes, look more closely. So Buddha Dhamma is not doctrinal, it's not sort of wagging its finger at you and saying, you shouldn't do that. It's bad. You're a bad boy. You're a bad girl. You should be like this. It's saying, bring more attention to your life. Open your eyes. Look around you. Look inside of yourself. And what we notice when we try to look inside is how difficult it is. And why is it difficult? Simply because we've never trained our mind. And there's a huge disconnect in so many people between the attention to detail, the amount of critical thinking that people employ in their careers, in their daily life, proving that they do have the capacity for that kind of critical thought, analytical thought, but they're not applying it to their inner world. And Buddha's saying it's the same thing, you know, and you can apply that kind of clarity and insight into the body and the mind, the five khandhas, the four elements. You can understand. You're not taking like a Buddhist dogma or a Buddhist theory and trying to apply it. You're looking and seeing, and you see for yourself, oh yes, it's like this. Oh yes, this is just exactly what the Lord Buddha taught. And this kind of yes, yes, yes moments that come from looking within and realizing that this is exactly how the Buddha revealed, and that the Buddha said, do this and you'll get this result, do that, you'll get that result. We apply ourselves, we try to do that, and we say, yes, it's true, yes, it's true. And so the faith that arises is not a blind faith. It's a faith based upon effort. And the Buddha said, this is a teaching of effort. It's a Viryavada. We know the word Theravada. The Buddha called this is Viryavada. It's the teaching of effort. you take the Four Noble Truths as the core teaching, then the Buddha is saying that dukkha in our lives, we're talking about mental suffering, mental disease, problems, are a function of the mind, the function of the misuse of the mind, the lack of understanding of mind, of our life. The Buddha revealed that our lives are not determined by, predetermined by God or gods or even past karma, but by our volitional actions in the present, expressed through body, speech, and mind. In other words, our karma. So we can see this. You see, this is verifiable. It's sandittika. So if you have a choice, let's say you could steal something or not steal something. You could be cruel or you could be kind. Is this preordained by God or God? Does your past karma force you to make that choice to be cruel or to be kind? Not necessarily. Is it a function of what social class you belong to, whether you're a man, whether you're a woman? No. When the Buddha claims that our worth as a human being is not dependent on our gender, on our class, on our background, on the money we have in the bank, but on the quality of our choices. This is not a philosophy. The Buddha says you can see this for yourself. What we can observe is that, for example, in the case of old karma, then we have certain predispositions. We are prone to, we are likely to act in certain ways. And old karma here, I'm not referring solely to past lives, but in this life, from our childhood, or even yesterday, or even this morning. The choices we've made in the past have an influence. They condition our responses in the present moment, but they're the raw material. But they are not, it's not predetermined. So we can see this for ourselves. What is it that leads us to, conditions us to act foolishly? What conditions us or helps us to act wisely? There's nothing fixed there. So we observe, well, if you are mindful, if you are present, calm and clear and bright in the present moment, you have more choices than you do if your mind is caught up in some emotion or some negativity. This is sandittika Dhamma, something you can observe. For example, if you're angry, you're stupid, basically. And what I mean by that is you don't see things clearly. When you're angry, you see things as black and white. You see complex situations as very simple, overly simple situations. You don't see the nuance, you don't see the context. Everything is just very loud and brash. And so the choices you have are very limited. But if you make your mind calm and clear and bright, then your mind is intelligent. You can think, well, maybe I could do this, or maybe that, or maybe I shouldn't do anything at all. And you're absorbing, all of the conditions that are prevailing at that moment. You have more choices. So why practice mindfulness? Well, to be more free, to be less conditioned, less of a puppet of conditions. And many of the people who are most proud of their independence and their freedom, they are in fact very unfree. They are little more than puppets because they are conditioned by like, dislike, wanting this, wanting sensual pleasures, wanting to be loved and liked and respected, to be known, to be famous, wanting to get away from things, wanting to get rid of things, wanting to resist things. All of these habits draw the mind, and the mind just slips into a rut, and the intention and the unwholesome intention is reinforced. So it's as if when something happens, the mind is just like dragged into a rut, and it's so predictable. The people whose minds are full of defilements, so easily predicted, so easily manipulated, so vulnerable. When you have mindfulness, there's creativity there, there's freshness. There's no simply following the easy path. You can see things so much more clearly. It's like you were driving with the windshield covered with dirt, and you clean the windshield, so, oh, now I see what's going on. Being able to be at peace with what happens, crisis, that's sometimes presented as the goal of Dhamma practice. You have someone's aggressive towards you, somebody mistreats you, and so on, and you can calm your mind and you can deal with it. And that's sometimes explained as the value of Dhamma practice. But that is the springboard. Equanimity, clarity of mind, that's the springboard from which you make good and wise decisions. It's not the end, it's part of a process. And so observe the number of times when, lacking mindfulness, you act in ways which you regret afterward. And how little that's the case when you act with mindfulness. Observe this. It's not difficult to observe, is it? So many people have the knowledge, what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad, what's kusala, what's akusala. You know, even people know the Abhidhamma. You know? It doesn't mean that they make wise choices, because you need a delivery system. It's like you have a medicine, chemical, or a natural substance which will heal serious illnesses. But you have to have a delivery system, whether it's an injection or through pills or capsules, before that drug can do its job. And often people lack that. They have the values, they have the knowledge, they have the understanding, but they can't access it. And an analogy that might help you to see, it's like you have a car or a motorbike parked outside your house, shiny new car, shiny new motorbike. Feel very happy whenever you see it. I'm proud of it. But then when you need to use that vehicle in an emergency, you can't find the keys. So what use is the vehicle if you can't drive it when you need to drive it? And this so often is the case with IQ, understanding, theories, beliefs, values. They're just good weather friends. This is why people can be very wise counselors. You have a friend who's in a problem, you can give them such good advice, and they're so grateful. And yet when you have the same problem, you can't advise yourself. When you're advising someone else, your own defilements, your own emotions are not engaged in the same way. So we need to learn, don't we, how to protect our mind from as yet unarisen, unwholesome dhammas. This is the first of the 4 elements of right effort. Now, so in daily life, we can't meditate in the way that you can in a monastery or on a meditation retreat. So how do you practice? And a lot of people just throw up their hands and just think, just sort of tread water and try to survive until the next retreat. And then you get this huge chasm between your mind on retreat and your mind in daily life. And often you can get resentful of your partner or your children or your job because they prevent you having the same kind of refined mindfulness that you can get on retreat. That's not a wise way. That's not a wise frame for looking life. And please observe also that the kind of work, spiritual work, you can do on retreat is significant because you're taken out of your everyday surroundings. You're with like-minded people. You're being encouraged. You can practice in a way that is uninterrupted by your normal responsibilities. There's an intensity and a momentum that you can build up on retreat, which is very difficult to acquire in daily life. But on meditation retreats, there are certain defilements that can easily go under the radar, and most usually do. And whereas during a meditation retreat, you are coming face to face with sensual desires, sexual desires, anger, aversion, laziness, sleepiness, agitation, doubts, all the hindrances. So this meditation retreats are like perfect for working with these defilements and learning how to govern them, how to free yourself from them. But the kind of defilements that are often unseen on retreats, and it may even become stronger, are those around conceit and pride and attachment to ideas and views and beliefs and theories and techniques, because you're not having any feedback. And when monks have this experience also, when they come out of long retreats and they come back in the monastery, and then things are, you meet people around you who don't have the same idea of who you are that you have. And you can't always bully them into accepting your ideas and your beliefs. So often there's a sense of frustration and ideas of being better than somebody, or being inferior to somebody, or being equal to somebody. And this is an important point also. In the teachings of conceit, there are 3 kinds of conceit. So the obvious one, which comes to mind immediately, somebody thinks they're superior and looks down their nose at everyone else, treats them with contempt. So that's a very obvious one. The inferiority complex, the inferiority conceit, can often be confused with humility, being humble, always putting yourself down. Oh, little old me, I'm nothing. And it's often seen to be very virtuous. But if it's based upon the sense of self, me inferior to him or her, it's also a defilement. But the third kind of conceit, this is the invisible one. We're all equal. Nobody's better than anyone else. I'm the same as you. Who are you to tell me what to do? That's conceit also, if it's based upon Sakaya Ditti, based upon the sense of me defining myself as a human being in relationship to you. And mana or conceit is always a kind of a level of measuring. You're always measuring yourself against other people. You see this on a national level, the conceit of a national level, where often leaders create monsters. Other countries are evil empires, because the conclusion is, well, if your enemy is evil, therefore you are good. You don't have any criteria necessary to prove your goodness. It's simply that people you don't like are the bad guys. And we do this, and the defilement of lifting up yourself by putting down others is one of the 16 upakilesa that the Buddha talked about. So trying to increase the regard with which other people treat you by putting down other people. That's a part of the area of conceit. So we can't meditate sitting cross-legged with our eyes closed for hours a day in daily life. But it doesn't mean that we can't practice. And the essence of practice, I would say, is not in the application of a particular technique, but it is these four right efforts which provide the bridge between what you do when you're sitting with your eyes closed and what you're doing in daily life. Your challenge is the same. That is to say, in a meditation session, whether you call it samatha or vipassana, it's this technique, that technique, it's irrelevant. You're starting off by facing the challenge. How can I sustain my attention on my meditation object such that as yet unarisen, unwholesome dhammas do not arise? And because that's so difficult, you also have to be ready to put forth the second kind of effort when unwholesome dhammas, akusala dhammas, do take over your mind. You have to make the effort to let them go, to abandon. I see at the same time in formal practice, we're trying to bring into the mind as yet unarisen wholesome dhammas, kusala dhammas. And to begin with, these are sati, sampajanya, atapi, is the balanced effort, not too tight, not too loose. And then following that, the jhana factors and the bojjhangas. So you're bringing wholesome factors into the mind during the meditation practice, and those which have already arisen, you're learning the skill of looking after them, cultivating them, and bringing them to maturity. Whatever the particular technique you may be using, it has to be based on those four right efforts to be correct and to lead to samasati, samasamadhi, and so on. In daily life, you don't have that fixed technique, but you're making the same effort. In this situation, right now, how can I take care of my mind so that unwholesome dhammas might not arise? And so the actual means by which you do that will vary according to the situation, whether you're by yourself, whether you're with your family, whether you're at work, whether you're in traffic, and you get to know what are the particular akusala dhammas that tend to arise in this situation, and you prepare yourself. So maybe if you're caught in the Bangalore traffic every day, you know, what are the defilements likely to arise? Frustration, irritation, maybe anger with somebody who's driving in a selfish, reckless way. And so that's your practice, driving to work or sitting on a bus or however you go to work, and taking care of your mind, not allowing those unwholesome dhammas of frustration, irritation, and so on from arising. Well, how do you do that? Well, you have a choice, and you need a toolbox of methods and applying them appropriately. So metta bhavana might be a very good one in traffic, if the tendency is to get irritated with other people, other drivers. Or you could be take some other topic of meditation and sustain it. See, if you have a driving, then you don't want to get too peaceful, because then you'll lose that sharpness mind. And then if your mind does become upset, angry, greedy, or whatever it might be, this is your practice. How do I deal with this? How do I abandon this? Which of the Buddha's teachings should I employ? And so wherever you are, whoever you're with, and whether you're in a monastery or at home or at work, you can always apply one of the four right efforts. You can, whether it's just simply being patient and being. I wrote something the other day. Some of the skillful means that you can practice. For example, if you're waiting, there's a long wait and it's hot and busy and dusty and noisy. You know, what is the tendency in your mind is how much longer, how much longer? How much longer do I have to sit here and stand here? And so your relationship to time becomes very tortured. You want the time to go as quickly as possible. You want an end to this. That's your suffering right there, isn't it? That's your Dhamma practice right there. If you think, oh, why am I spending my time in these busy, noisy, dusty places? I just want to go back on retreat. You've missed the point. The point is, how do you deal with the present situation in the most skillful way possible, so that you do not suffer, or you suffer as little as possible? So I had this long time ago, I think, noticing this sense, and I just want to get out of here. When's this going to end? How much longer? How much longer? And then I realized you could just change the frame. I gave myself a job, a task, 108 consecutive breaths. Be mindful of 108 consecutive breaths. And when you give yourself a task like that, your relationship to the time changes. Rather than wanting the time for you to leave and rather than wanting the time to go as quickly as possible, you actually don't want the time to go because you want to finish your task before the time's up. So rather than being impatient, you think just a few more minutes, just a few more seconds, just a few more minutes. I haven't got to 108 yet, you see. So you can give yourself a task, simple task, and your whole mind changes. It's a different frame. In the Thai forest tradition, there's a lot of emphasis on walking meditation, and we do a lot of walking and alternate sitting and walking. Some monks walk a lot more than sit. If you develop walking meditation, it gives you a flexibility. Means if for some reason sitting is not possible, maybe through health problems or leg pain or back pain or whatever, it can be an alternative. Or if it's very early in the morning or very late at night, and if you sit, you maybe get too sleepy, walking is a good alternative. But one of the important things is when we're sitting, we're developing mindfulness and clarity in stillness. What walking meditation gives us is mindfulness in movement. When we're in the Thai forest style of walking, we're walking at a more or less normal pace, maybe slightly, but with our hands in front of us, in a very composed way, looking down to the ground, maybe a couple of meters ahead of us. But it's much more natural and normal. I mean, when you're sitting, it's rather artificial. It's a special thing you only do when you're meditating. But walking, we're walking all the time. And the value of walking meditation, one of the values is very easily integrated into daily life. Very useful for lay meditators in particular. Once you have developed some skill in walking meditation, you realize there are so many opportunities for it in your daily life. Walking from one building to another building, one building to a bus stop or to your car, or from your car to a building, upstairs, downstairs, one room to another